In a 10th pizzeria. I don't think it's a secret that the main reason people compare Freddy Fazbear's to Chuck E. Cheese is because it's the same shtick. I think it's pretty obvious. Obvious enough, in fact, that I don't really need to talk about it, but this is going out in like 2 weeks' time, so I needed numbers, okay? I'm literally filming this on the day that Security Breach is supposed to come out. So anything that relates it to Chuck E.'s, if any, since this is one that takes place in a giant mall, and I don't think Chuck E.'s has done that, it won't be on the list, because the game doesn't release for like another 7 hours. But I haven't heard of any other children's pizzerias with animatronics and all like the hoopla of cardboard pizza. I mean, like there may be some overseas, but in the States where this game takes place and where the creator is from, I don't think that there's any competitors to Chuck E. Cheese. The idea of a pizzeria with robot animatronics that sing is pretty unique, so I think that's fairly obvious. Also the name, Freddy Fazbear, Chuck E. Cheese. And at 9, animatronics. Now, not only are the animatronics just kind of the same, since, you know, they're all anthropomorphized animals, but even the characters seem the same. The inspiration for Chica could be one of many things, but most notably, in this case at least, one of Chucky's friends from the Chuck E. Cheese lineup is called Helen Henny, which would make a lot of sense given the alliteration in Chica's name and the fact that they're both chickens. Helen Henny and Chica the Chicken, I think, are pretty obviously meant to be connected, and while Bonnie and Freddy may not have direct comparisons, I think that, like, the whole, like, it's a pizzeria thing, the animatronics are pretty solid evidence as to why they're the same as well. Plus, Foxy may be in some ways based on the character of Rolf the Wolf from the Rock of Fire Explosion, Showbiz Pizza Place's animatronic band, which is also a part of Chucky's group, as they both have their own stage apart from the other characters, and both animatronics are animals part of the Canidae family, or Canidae family. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but that's just like foxes, wolves, dogs, etc. And at 8, arcade. And while plenty of places have arcades, I mean, like, hell, even my cousin has an arcade, but that's because he's absolutely rolling in it. The main comparison is the whole prize counter thing. Not many places have a prize counter, but it is certainly not exclusive to Chuck E.'s. A bowling alley in my hometown has one, Dave & Buster's has one, the list goes on. I mean, if they really want to generate like a customer base based on the arcade, they usually have a prize counter. But I think that it's the arcade and prize counter in combination with everything else that kind of solidifies it as being a Chuck E. Cheese. Only Chuck E.'s has all 3 of these previous points, and even for me, I haven't gone to a Chuck E.'s in God knows how long, but I can still picture the arcade clear as day, and all I need to do to change that memory into a memory of being at a Freddy Fazbear's is just change the animatronics. I can change them simply enough since it's not really a memory and really a recreation of a memory, like how the Rick uploads the virus in the season 3 premiere of Rick and Morty, since he makes a totally fabricated origin story, which we have since learned at least has a little bit of truth to it. So basically it's like that, okay? Take parts of something that I remember and change small things about it, and then boom, I'm in Freddy Fazbear's. Change Chucky to Freddy, and the guy in the costume dancing with the kids is a Bonnie now, and now he's leading kids to the back room where the other animatronics are. Oh no. And at 7, headlines. The Twitter account of Diamond Zia on June 27, 2020 tweeted out 3 photos with the line of, quote, FNAF will be real in 48 hours. These pictures were of news articles, one from USA Today titled 5 children have gone missing inside Chuck E. Cheese, parents report smells coming ... one from Associated Press called post-hour worker at Chuck E. Cheese reported dead at 27, and a final one from the Something News titled night shift workers at Chuck E. Cheese claim strange movements from animatronics during post hours. However, this title had animatronics spelled incorrectly. It said animictronics. Everyone was freaking out, understandably, and the pictures of the articles, particularly the first one, were shared all across the internet. People were losing their minds, especially because this is around the time where Chuck E. Cheese was announcing their closure. However, people didn't realize that these were just fake. How are they fake, you ask? It's simple. Source code editing. You can change what anything says on a website using like source code inspection, but it will only change for you. Like until you like reload the page, like by editing the source code. You just need to like find the aspect you're looking for, and then once you do, you can change it to whatever you want. So whoever made the original image had found an article about Chuck E. Cheese closing from USA Today, and then changed the title to 5 children going missing, and the same thing with the other articles. Hence why there are only images of the articles and not actual links. It was a hoax that blew up and honestly probably hurt Chuck E. Cheese even more. And at 6, closing. Also the fact that due to COVID, because you know, global pandemic, a load of Chuck E. Cheese locations were closing isn't helping the comparison to FNAF, considering how multiple Chuck E. Cheese locations closed as well, not just the one. Like I said, some people were blaming these closings on missing children and other things, like in the last point, but that's not really the case. They were just starting to lose too much money to keep their restaurants operational, so they just had to close some of them. Did they close a location in Hurricane, Utah, where the games take place? No. But they closed one in Layton, Utah, which is like a 4-hour drive from Hurricane. Hurricane is actually closer to Las Vegas than it is to Layton. So I think we're safe to say that these pizzerias are safe from sprees, hopefully. And even rebranding part of their kitchen to Pascali's Pizza and Wings didn't really do them much good. But it helped Matt Patton get a hold of a pizza to test it, to see if the Chuck E. Cheese pizzas were reassembled or if they were just born that way in a food theory. And turns out they're just born that way. Halfway through into number 5, Real Pizzeria. Before the release of FNAF 4, Scott Cawthon's website was littered with references to the numbers 8 and 7 in the source code. This caused many fans and even dear old Matt Pat to think that these were references to the year 1987, when the famous frontal lobe bite occurred. However, other fans believed that these were coordinates, so after plugging them into Google Maps somehow, which honestly I don't understand how you would have gone about doing that. Like, do you just like type all the numbers in? Like, I don't know, I tried it and it didn't work. Whatever. After putting them into Google Maps somehow, they found a location that it actually gave. And the location was an actual pizzeria. Obviously, once this got shared, fans of the franchise started harassing the place trying to get answers. And while it was all one big coincidence, someone might have caught on before. Kathy Blockus reviewed the pizzeria saying, "Run for your lives out of there." This was left 3 weeks before FNAF 4 was announced, which is when all the 8s and 7s appeared on the website. So while this is incriminating, they also left the place 5 stars on that review where they said that they were watching people get. So obviously they're just a fan of the franchise. And at 4, FNAF 4 Bite. FNAF 4 may be one of the most confusing games in the franchise, with seemingly nobody having solved it to this day unless Scott just hasn't mentioned it. But the Bite of 83, which takes place at the end of this game, makes these scarily like a real FNAF location. Not because something like this has happened before, or at least as far as I could tell from my research, but because this isn't a death that has to do with possessed animatronics or crazy technology, or resurrected purple people being bruised from the inside thanks to an amalgam of animatronic parts. No, this just has to do with an animatronic being given way too much juice. Matt Pat tackled this exact topic in a theory back from 2017, where he determined that to cause a catastrophic brain failure like we see crying suffer in that bite, each of the 8 teeth that he gets bit with would have had to been applying over 14,000 newtons of force. 14,758 newtons of force to be exact. Which, like I've been saying, is serious overkill for moving an animatronic head. That would require multiple industrial grade pneumatic actuators that you wouldn't be able to fit in the suit, okay? This isn't a spring lock failure, like a lot of people say. This was something that is tangible in this reality, and that's probably even more terrifying than all of the jump scares at once. Getting close to the end in number 3, Disturbing Desires. Okay, so this is something that, while not directly translating into like the FNAF world or from FNAF to our world, it's a serious issue that I've seen in the comments, okay? So we've made a series of videos about how we could turn a closed Chuck E. Cheese location into a FNAF joint, or even all of them into FNAF joints, but you see, in the comments of those videos, which you should totally go watch by the way, links in the iCard, and then share the videos with Scott because that sounds like a fun project, even if it's just like for a week, please. If Mr. Beast can open a fast food chain, Scott, I'm sure you can make FNAF real. The comments of those videos, okay, are full of various people telling me that they think it would be a great idea to have a real FNAF, because then they could go and in the restaurant and possess an animatronic. What? Why the absolute hell would you want that? First of all, okay, possession isn't real. That's not a thing in real life. I have yet to see any real evidence about it or anything paranormal, okay? But in addition to that, even going by FNAF rules, you would need to suffer heavily when you die in order to generate the agony that is needed to possess something. Since in FNAF, all possession is actually just a manifestation of your extreme agony grabbing onto something that's nearby, as we learned from Fazbear Frights and Dr. Phineas Taggart. If you're happy that you're in the FNAF restaurant and you're happy that you're dying there so you can possess something, you wouldn't end up possessing something because you wouldn't be in agony. You'd be happy. So this is just a bad idea overall. Don't do it. Penultimately, in number 2, employee manual. Oh, well, do you think that I'm talking about the FNAF employee manual? Absolutely not. I wish it was. This number is actually much more concerning than that, because a particular image sent people into a frenzy with the idea that Chuck E. Cheese restaurant animatronics are actually gonna hurt you. A post from Twitter user @PabloThinghouse made mention of the restaurant's instruction manual, which is for employees, which included a section that said Chuck E. Cheese himself had facial recognition software that would cause him to come to life and attack any intruders caught on the property after hours. Sound familiar, anyone? With the actual manual in the now hidden or deleted tweet saying, quote, "It is always important that all Chuck E. Cheese night shift employees must wear a spare Chuck E. Cheese costume head to avoid any animatronic facial recognition, because if they spot any humans in the building post hours, they will automatically detect that person as a criminal trying to tamper with objects on the building, and that won't lead to anything good." And Pablo's reaction was probably realistic here, since they said, quote, excuse me? And the fact that this is supposed to be the actual manual makes me sad. However, I looked it up and it's not the case, but this is still kind of freaky. There are plenty of people who'd like a real-life Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and honestly, it could be closer than we think. Whether it's being delayed because of or some other factor that we can't account for, a real-life Freddy Fazbear's would be fun as hell, no pun intended. There were people asking MatPat and Scott to work together to make it happen, but guess what? I've come up with a strategy that could totally work, even if it may need some tweaking because it's the US and I'm working with like Canadian prices and laws and stuff, but it could still translate to an actual plan that can really work to get us a real-life Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, except hopefully without the and convoluted story that we don't totally understand. I even made a couple mock-ups so that this can actually happen. So, share this with Scott on Reddit if you want to see a real-life Freddy Fazbear's, and let me jump in. Firstly, location, right? The obvious answer here is to go with the closed Chuck E. Cheese location. Chuck E. Cheese recently has closed 34 locations across the US, with locations closing in California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So, any of these locations could be used as a potential first location at the very least, with some states having multiple closures. Buying one of these locations would be expensive, and online I couldn't find any real reports on how much it would be. You'd have to work that out with Chuck E. Cheese. However, to open and operate a Chuck E. Cheese location would range from $1.17 million to $1.83 million, with a franchise fee of $800,000, according to Chuck E. Cheese's section of franchisehelp.com. So assuming the higher end of the price range, this would require an investment of around $2.63 million, not taking into account that these locations are closed and they're probably just looking to break even on it and maybe not make money. But which state should we be selecting? Well, looking on Google Trends, we can actually see what states search for Five Nights at Freddy's the most. Looking for the search term Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, since you know that would be the name of the location, we see Virginia searching it the most over the past 12 months as of April 2021, followed by Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Texas in that order. Comparing that to our list of states, Virginia is the state with the highest search and has a close location in Fredericksburg. And I don't know about you, but the fact that it's in Fredericksburg, you know, like Freddy, that seems like fate to me. But there is also the thought of Florida, who is the second most searched and is only slightly less searched, so like it's like a close second, and has multiple Chuck E. Cheese restaurants closed, located in Miami, North Lauderdale, Miami Gardens, and Green Acres, so there is room for expansion. Florida is also a popular tourist spot thanks to the Disney park in Orlando, where I would go with my family. I think we've went like 2 or 3 times. So it's probably a better idea to go with Florida's Miami location, even though Orlando and Miami aren't really that close, but it's still centralized, okay? And everything's open in Florida, so you can start work on it right away. So the Miami Chuck E. Cheese location is the first one to be bought by Scott Cawthon. What would it look like? Well, many fan creations always make it appear the same as just a normal Chuck E. Cheese, but replacing the logo and text. probably the most famous one being the image used in MatPat's old FNAF theories. But we could take this one step further. Since the inside of the restaurant is already seen in-game, we can take that same design concept and just convert it to real life. I feel like that's pretty obvious. With the red and black squares along the wall, potentially outlined with additional decoration. You would also need to either replace or repaint the tables and booths and stuff like that, along with replacing the posters on the wall and the banners hanging above. The purple would also be changed to another color, most likely red, or maybe more of the red and black square pattern we see along the walls in the first couple games. The animatronics, if included, could easily be updated with Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie designs. Well, I mean like easy in comparison to everything else that needs to be done. And once that's done, you just need to replace the songs that play out of the speakers, and then boom, you got working stage shows. I don't know if Foxy would need to have his own section, or if you'd want to like add that off to the side, or if you want to use the kind of like separate stage that's on some of the Chuck E. Cheese stages. I don't know, it depends on the location, if it actually has one. But other than that, that's just more construction work. Now, what makes this different than your typical kids play joint, you ask? While it does actually have the FNAF characters, not infringing on copyright because Scott would be doing this all himself, there is another aspect of the place that I think would make this even more unique and bring in more sales. FNAF is a horror franchise after all, and for some reason a whole load of these kids love being scared crapless by the many animatronics. So, why shouldn't this location offer a spooky surprise for anyone willing to come after dark? Much like how Security Breach will have a day and night cycle, why not let the restaurants have the same? Where instead of closing at 9 p.m, they swap to a creepy and horror-themed joint where the kids can come to get scared while eating pizza and playing games. You know, the lights can flicker, you have people dressed up, like a year-round haunted house. We could even get some of the games we see in Pizzeria Simulator, like Fruity Maze and Midnight Motorist, and real physical arcade machines. All you need is a TV monitor. People do it all the time on YouTube. It would actually be an incredible idea that would suck in a lot more people and increase profits late into the night. This also works for adults who are fans of the series, who may not want to deal with the children and the kid-friendly atmosphere that the location would have during the day. This time frame would feature actors in the FNAF suits, but not Springlock suits because, well, we all know how that ends. But this would be just like a Halloween haunt for our Canadian friends, or whatever Disney does. It's like Halloween Horror Nights or whatever it's called over there. People in costumes who can't touch but aim to scare, maybe jiggling some doors or hiring actors working as kids or patrons who get lured away, maybe even making a Nightmare Fredbear suit. There is so much that you can do. Oh, you can have like Foxy slowly peek out from behind it unless someone like looks or something like that. You can have him slowly peek out and then you can Eventually, of course, you could expand, opening more Fazbear locations at the other closed Chuck E. Cheeses. And I feel like Chuck E. Cheese would be down for that too, because the resulting competition could help boost their sales as well, since there would be kids who don't want to go to a horror-themed joint at night, but have a newly ignited or rediscovered joy for pizzeria arcades and animatronic bands. And hell, even as a joke, you could open up Chica's Party World, because we all know that Scott's gonna have some form of like ARG with these locations if this is actually a thing. Scott, I have an idea for that too. Hit me up. The menu would serve pizza, obviously, but also themed meals like Chica's Chicken Wings or Bonnie's Breakfast for Dinner, since, you know, eggs. Maybe Foxy's Flapjacks. It will definitely use a little work, but I'm honestly thinking it would taste and look incredible, both the menu and the food respectively. I have a design in mind, but let's be honest, I can't show my whole hand, can I? No, I actually gotta leave some stuff to actually hopefully make this a thing. So, cause you know, if there's some mystery, Scott might actually like, you know, cause we all know how he loves mystery. And Scott, by the way, I'm happy to help. I love this series and would travel to see a Fazbear restaurant like this happen. And if you go with the Florida location like I suggested, everything is open, so you're already good to go. Maybe not morally speaking, but just like roleplay William Afton and you'll be fine. So, share this video with Scott on Reddit and any other media you can so he can help see it. Sky Daddy Scott, please make this a thing and please let me help. I promise I will be professional and I won't actually call you Sky Daddy Scott to your face. The menu is simple, since it's on a monitor and needs to be seen at a distance, with a red border and simple sans serif text describing the various dishes and listing prices, with images of the dishes of the 4 major characters on each of the screens: Freddy's Pizza, Chica's Chicken Wings, Bonnie's Breakfast for Dinner, and Foxy's Ultimate Nachos. I was going to do Ultimate Fries, but kids are going to find nachos more exciting than fries, even if the whole alliteration thing makes sense. And while the horror events are focused on adults, the majority of the fan base and patrons are going to be children. Hopefully not missing ones. Obviously, you can also offer alcoholic beverages like beer and perhaps margaritas for the parents of the kids during the day, and all the adults that will be coming in during the horror nights, more on that later. But other than that, it's a fairly straightforward menu. The menu has to be simple for the kids and anyone looking from a distance, and this is the kind of stuff I actually went to school for. I went over the interior design in the last part briefly, but only offered ideas instead of actually providing examples. So let's do that. Like I said last time, I think the purple sections of the wall should be replaced with red and black squares like we see in the original maps. And the white and black squares with the red outlines on the walls should go around the joint as well. We've seen the interior in the first few games, so we might as well just recreate something similar. The booths could just be repainted, or they could be separated into sections based on what animatronic is your favorite. Same with the party tables, with sections for Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy, with posters for each characters indicating those sections, as well as banners to indicate it overhead so you can see it at a glance. The stage may come with a separate section for Foxy known as the Galaxy stage for Chuck E. Cheese, which would easily be converted into Pirates Cove. It's already a circle, you just put up a curtain. The arcade is probably the biggest reason anyone went to Chuck E. Cheese, the second being the recycled pizza conspiracy, and the third being because of the characters. However, the kids this time around will be coming for the FNAF characters and be staying for the arcade. The arcade could be filled with the normal games we see at normal Chuck E. Cheese's: skee-ball, whack-a-mole, basketball, knock-a-clown, all the rest. However, the biggest showstoppers could be FNAF-themed versions of these games. Whack-a-mole could be Whack-a-Mini-Rena, and Knock-a-Clown, you know, the one where you like throw the balls at the clown or like you throw them at his teeth, could be Popping Balloon Boy's balloons. There could be a photo booth that puts a nightmare animatronic or Springtrap behind the people in the booth for a real scare, and you could include custom games like Fruity Maze, Midnight Motorist, and Security Puppet. There are plenty of people who've made their own arcade cabinets. Take this one from the YouTube channel I Like to Make Stuff. Bob does an incredible job. And all Scott would really need to do is code full versions of these games. Oh no, a game dev having to code new games, so difficult. Actually, not even new games. Games that he's already made, just full versions. The games would be incredibly popular and would result in high revenue since they wouldn't really provide tickets, so they'd just be spending coins to play real FNAF games, but getting nothing other than that in return so your prize counter doesn't lose anything. This is how the businesses think. They could also make machines for arcade versions of the original FNAF games, maybe having buttons that flip through cameras and you need to find Foxy before he gets to you or something along those lines. The prize counter could have a real version of the FNAF puppet box there, playing its signature music to provide a reason for why it's still closed. However, this could potentially be opened at night during the horror nights. If not, the person working at the prize counter could simply be dressed like the puppet. The prize counter could offer things similar to the one from Help Wanted, and offering signature items such as stuffed baskets of exotic butters, which have already been made by Funko. They could also offer FNAF Funko Pop figures, with rarer ones being valued higher, as well as potentially Switch and console versions of the games, along with the smaller prizes that are just meant to keep people from getting the big prizes by saving up. You know, the kids will impulse buy them. That's why they're there. This could also feature recreations of things like the Lore Keeper ending certificate, which you could potentially get by presenting something given to you after beating all 3 of the FNAF 6 games. You know, the ones in the custom cabinets I mentioned. There is way more we can talk about this, trust me. Now, the horror nights are what I find the most interesting out of these new ideas, with maybe these happening once or twice a week instead of every night like I said last time, thinking logistically and knowing that most people won't want to work all the nights. 9 p.m. would be when they would normally close, so instead, how about closing for an hour while the team sets up for a special treat for all who dare to return. The restaurant could be lit with black lights, revealing blood stains on the wall along with handprints and maybe some text written in blood, or paint that shows up under a black light, and not during the day. The lights in the bathrooms could be flickering, and most of the arcade machines would be off, aside from any that make loud noises, distract well, or could scare you. Skee-ball, basketball, balloon popping for example, as well as any custom ones like the FNAF 6 Lore Keeper minigames, or if any of the 8-bit minigames from FNAF 2 were recreated. Obviously, they would include jump scares at the end. The food would be limited to whatever you wanted, probably taking away the breakfast for dinner, and you could have actors walking around in nightmare-themed suits with the animatronics programmed to make sudden movements, since they need to move to keep their servos from locking up, but they can't really walk around. The music that plays could be replaced with atmospheric and scary themed music, like what we use for our videos, with periodic screams and maybe a couple faded door shakes and calls from Phone Guy, making sure that Scott Cawthon makes an appearance in the first Freddy's location. This would be the first pizzeria to do something like this, as of my knowledge, and the possibilities are endless. It would be a great first date as long as you're both into it, and it would increase profits tenfold, basically turning the place into a diet bar with horror elements, keeping the place open until 2 a.m. when you have last call at 1 or 1:30. I don't know how bars work. I turned 19 and then I didn't really go to bars, and then the whole pandemic thing happened, so I can't really go to bars now. Yeah, I don't know how bars work. I could talk about cash flow and investments, but that doesn't really interest you, I'm sure, because I have thought a lot about this and other opportunities that this would present. So like I said last time, if you want a real FNAF location, share this with Scott on Reddit, Twitter, even though he doesn't use it, Steam, wherever you can. Share it with MatPat, Daco, and Markiplier, so maybe they can see it and get interested too. Or maybe send it to Scott, because I'm pretty sure they have at least more of a direct line than I do. I just say Sky Daddy Scott, please. So there's always been this desire from the community for a real Freddy Fazbear's, and it's been present since the first game, because for some reason they all think that it's a good idea to have a restaurant whose fictional series is built around the to have a real-world counterpart. And while I do believe that it would make an incredible amount of money, and it could be an outlet for Scott to divulge some more lore to us, there are plenty of sick people out there. So sick, in fact, that they might just want to recreate the games and may just take on the role of William Afton. And plenty of people have said that they're willing to die at a real Freddy Fazbear's as long as they get to contribute to making the FNAF story real. And that's honestly probably why Scott has at one point said that he didn't want to make one. But is this really the case? Has Scott just ignored the massive opportunity he has in front of him in the form of a real Freddy Fazbear's? Well, maybe not, but it's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. Let me explain. We know how dedicated Scott is to dates, both in-game and IRL, when releasing or talking about his games. He released FNAF 2 87 days after the first, like how we were all focused on the bite of 87 from the first game. Any date that he has put in the series has been solid, and even if things are changing, he always stuck to the bite of 87 and the bite of 83. Dates have always been important to Scott. And as any fan of the series that has at least tried their hand at their own timeline can tell you, FNAF 3 takes place 30 years in the future. In fact, the events of FNAF 3 take place in around 2023. And while that's quite the coincidence in-game, because like 30 years in 2023, I don't know why I think there's a coincidence. I think just maybe because they both have 3s. Anyway, the thought is that perhaps, while we may not get a real Freddy Fazbear's this year or the next, that 2023 is a possibility for when a real Freddy Fazbear's or even a real Fazbear Frights could open. I mean, if he started planning now, it would definitely take a while, right? Hell, maybe he's already started planning, but now he has to wait because of COVID, or he's just planning on opening it up in 2023. And by Fazbear Frights, I mean the location of the third FNAF game, not the book series. And I mean, they are going to need a set for the upcoming FNAF movie, whenever it ends up going out, so maybe this is all just getting us prepared for a real FNAF. I mean, there was that Nicolas Cage FNAF movie ripoff that I'm sure was just a cash grab trying to capitalize on the FNAF movie hype before the actual FNAF movie came out. But could this be what Scott was planning from the beginning? Getting everyone hyped for the possibility of a real location, or what a real location would look like in his mind with the movie and the books which expand on the lore, because he was planning to open one for 2023 at the same time that Fazbear Frights would have opened in the FNAF universe. It would make sense, especially for Scott. And he's really running out of ways to give us more lore hints at this point. He's already released 3 full novels along with like 9 books that all have 3 shorter stories inside, and those, and especially the Fazbear Frights books, yeah, don't think I didn't notice the name, all had insane lore clues that helped us distinguish parts of the series that we've been previously confused about. Like how William had survived being in a blocked off room for 30 years without food or water because he was possessed by a kid. It also explains how he survived the fire from FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, and how he managed to get a hard drive in order to possess it before FNAF VR, so it could get scanned into the game and then he would become basically immortal. But now we've seen source code being used as a clue, the names of photo files that we've had to access with Notepad being a clue, audio files, voice actor listings. Hell, at one point I decoded the name of a color and how it relates to the Emily family as a clue. Not to mention the countless hours of searching through all the games and then the logbook, and oh my gone. And yet still nobody has figured out FNAF 4. There aren't many new things he could do to bring us innovative ways for hints, unless that's what this place would be for. And he used this place as an ARG of sorts, where you can get lore clues and maybe even some answers to things like FNAF 4, or even who caused the bite of 87. So we can have a definitive answer instead of being stuck on either Mangle or Toy Chica or Golden Freddy. Hell, pull a WandaVision and base the series off a new decade each week so we can actually be there for the bite of 87 when it takes place and then gets shut down and then it reopens the next week as a new decade. Huh? And for those people saying Scott already said he wouldn't do it, first of all, people change their mind all the time, whether the reason is financial or not, and this place would be a huge success, especially after Chuck E. Cheese closed over like 30 locations. The timing couldn't be better at this point, honestly. The big problem with this is the danger, and while I'm sure Scott would have as many security measures as he could, we need to remember what the story of the games is. It's about kids in these restaurants, and by one of the creators of the restaurants, no less. I'm sure that Scott doesn't want to end up like Henry. These issues only heighten when you look at the discussions on this. I've seen comments on our videos talking about how they'd be happy to get stuffed inside of Freddy, and how they'd just be happy to Freddy Fazbear's. I'm not even going to make a joke about how you would rather want to be stuffed into Toy Chica, but also the comments about how they want to kill someone in a FNAF location, or how they want someone to kill someone in a FNAF location. No. Or how they want someone to go missing and the story of the games to be real. Look, I know you guys love the game, okay? I love it too. The story is incredible and cryptic in all the best ways. But what the hell? Like comments from the last video talking about what could be in like a real FNAF. Someone had commented, bro, if this became a thing, I would want to get so I can possess a suit. That would be so epic. Ah, yes. No. It wouldn't be epic because you'd be dead. Possession isn't a real thing in the real world, okay? And even if it was, we don't know how it works. It's not like if there's a real world version of FNAF, that agony will be what determines you possessing something, okay? If possession was real, it wouldn't be something that's simple and it wouldn't be something you can control. And at that point, if you want to be, it's not, okay? It's self-assisted. Because, you know, if I say the actual word, YouTube's gonna flag this video. But that wouldn't cause you agony, you'd be happy to die. It wouldn't even work in the FNAF universe sense. But it's reasons like those that will ultimately get Scott to shut down this idea permanently. And even if they're meant as jokes, he probably wouldn't want to take the chance because, well, they may not all be jokes. And if anyone got hurt or worse because of something he opened, honestly, I don't think any of us would be able to forgive ourselves if we were the cause of that. Like if we were in Scott's shoes and we opened a Fazbear restaurant and then someone ended up getting killed because of the games and the restaurant, I wouldn't be able to handle that, I know that. Even for asking for it so much that he felt like he had to do it. So stop saying crazy shit like that. You know for a fact that you don't want to get killed at the place, even if it's what the original games do or whatever. That's not fun, it's not cool, don't say it. It won't help the situation. So if you really want a real FNAF, stop saying it so you can get killed there, okay? I can't believe that I had to say that. And at 10, working at Freddy's. Working at Freddy's would suck. Like, if we're in so much danger, why are we staying for the 5 nights? Okay, do we need a job that bad? Putting, like, the lore reasons aside, right? But the real question is, other than that, how is Fazbear Entertainment even allowed to have employees in an environment like this? Already working there, you would have to deal with the possibility of a spring lock failure, and Henry and William just letting the people who run your business and making them money wear the suits is stupid, okay? Like, put this on or you're fired, but don't end up dying from robotic parts replacing your internal organs in the hot suits that fail with moisture. Like, seriously? Want to talk about health and safety? What about the having actual corpses stuffed into animatronic suits that are in front of how many kids every single day? Especially when one of them is known for loving pizza and in the VR game is shown in her FNAF 1 form to actually be shoving pizza into the various joints of her body. Plus, 5 nights of animatronics trying to kill me? Yeah, no thanks, okay? I'm glad you fired me at the end of it, but honestly, I'd have quit as soon as, like, the first phone call ended. No thanks. Phone guy's like, oh, they might move? No, I'm done. In at 9, Scooped. Now, I know you may be mad and think that this is a stupid point, but hear me out, okay? The Scooper may seem like a weird but normal thing, at least by FNAF standards at first, but with the blueprint revealing how this thing actually works, it's an incredible piece of technology that is far worse than a spring-lock suit. It can inject whatever it ends up scooping with Remnant, which is a molten metal possessed by souls, and, assuming that my theory about Michael being a robot was wrong, keeping a person alive after removing their insides. It's capable of doing that, replacing their parts with robot parts, and then having those robotic parts leave the body but still have the person be alive. In essence, it makes that person just a walking case of flesh that is still somehow able to stand up on its own. Unless it didn't actually remove anything and it just like opened him up, but then again, it would still require some serious juice to keep him alive after that. That's pretty damn impressive, and it's also terrifying. I'd rather have the instant death of a spring-lock suit than having my bones replaced with robotic ones. Yeah, no thanks. At least while I'm awake. Replace my bones with metal ones when I'm asleep, so I can just like... In at 8, Grabbed. Elizabeth Afton getting grabbed by Baby is one of the most terrifying moments in the series. Possibly because Crying Child saw it, which would explain the stomach mouths on the nightmare animatronics. However, if we were to like see this from Crying Child's perspective, whether that detail is canon or not, if we saw it from his perspective, oh my freaking god, that would be so utterly terrifying. I would stand still. I wouldn't know what to do. Okay, how do you explain why a kid is like hiding in the bushes while his sister is getting grabbed by an animatronic claw? Okay, you don't. She was just trying to get ice cream. It's horrible. It's shocking. God, especially considering that Elizabeth ends up turning into an absolute psychopath after this, okay? Like, Elizabeth is nuts. But still, like, I don't know. It's that thought of just watching someone get grabbed. Like, sure, maybe for Elizabeth it wasn't that bad because, you know, she kind of was crazy apparently. But still, like, watching it happen, that's just f***ed up. That's a horrible thing to watch happen. It's worse than a spring lock, definitely. And at 7, the Alvy machine. While working at a meat packing plant in Greeley, Colorado, a construction worker met a tragic end while installing an access catwalk. One of the larger machines at the plant, the Alvy, which was used to move boxed meat from a higher conveyor belt to a lower one, had not been properly turned off while the contractor was working. The heavy arm of the robot knocked him off his feet, and he then fell 10 feet onto a conveyor belt below, where his head was crushed by heavy machinery him instantly, yet again with the head crushing. Jeez. Or as the accident report so eloquently puts it, quote, "The Alvy machine was not de-energized nor locked out, and employee number 1 wore no fall protection. While employee number 1 was connecting the platform to the catwalk adjacent to, in, and around the path of travel of the inserter and extruder car of the Alvy machine, the car struck the construction worker. Employee number 1 fell approximately 10 feet, getting caught in the path of travel of the inserter and extruder car, and traveling under the car, which crushed employee number 1's head and killed him as the car reached its first resistance, that being the next angle iron joint of the car pathway." End quote. Gotta love the numbers. Jeez. And at 6, Mystery Incident. Alright, so this one's actually FNAF. One of the oldest theories is that the shadow animatronics are the first springlock victims. This one comes to us after the FNAF 3 phone guy dialogue that mentioned multiple and simultaneous springlock failures. Some interpreted this as multiple springlock suits failing at once, since the term springlock in this situation is used to describe the suit as a whole and the individual springlock mechanisms within the suit. So the line of multiple and simultaneous springlock failures could mean multiple of the springlocks inside one suit failing at the same time, or multiple suits failing at the same time. This led some to theorize that previous employees were killed in the springlock suit, which is where the shadow animatronics come from. This is supported by the fact that these shadows are of Freddy and Bonnie, the two animatronics that have springlock versions. However, there are multiple holes to this theory. Mostly the design of the shadow animatronics is not like the springlock suits. Shadow Bonnie is very much modeled after Toy Bonnie, and Freddy is more like the Freddy or Golden Freddy from FNAF 1 and not like the Fredbear we see in FNAF 4. There are also people that say if this happened, then the robots would have been decommissioned, but as we've seen from this list and the last part, that wouldn't necessarily happen. And also, if you like what we're doing here, then firstly, seek help, but also, be sure you hit like and subscribe, because I yell about various video game series all the time, and yes, it is various ones now, we're not just doing FNAF, I promise. And at 4, Volkswagen. A contractor at another Volkswagen production plant in Germany also died as a result of an incident involving a robot, according to the automaker. The incident occurred on a Monday
at the plant in Bonneville, located 100 kilometers north of Frankfurt. The victim, a 22-year-old man, was part of a team that was setting up a stationary robot, and it grabbed and crushed him against a metal plate. According to Volkswagen spokesperson Heiko Hillwing, initial conclusions indicated that it was a human error that caused the incident, again, rather than a problem with the robot itself. But the robot, which can be programmed to perform various tasks in the assembly process, normally operates within a confined area at the plant, handling auto parts and manipulating them as well. Other people were there, but they weren't injured, so again, it's all up in the air. And at 3, Henry Emily. I get that spring lock failures suck, but even the good guys in this series are kinda trash. FNAF 6 was supposed to be the end of the Afton story. That's what Henry set out to do in that game. Make sure that nobody remembered what happened there, despite the parents of the victims remembering and the various other news sources covering it. However, the figured that the first fire didn't work, so a second one is definitely going to. And the fact that he was so confident in this plan for whatever reason that he actually let himself die in the process to make sure that nobody remembered what happened is dumb. Like I said, dude, even if Henry and William and his kids are dead, the parents of the victims still know. And as we learned in Security Breach, there are other parents who remember too, citing the missing children from the Pizzaplex as happening again, which means they know it happened before. Maybe if Henry had some balls, William wouldn't have been able to possess Vanny and come back yet again to wreak even more havoc, or I don't know, maybe everything would have been fine. The Pizzaplex missing children are a direct result of Henry being worse than a springlock failure, and you can't tell me any different. Springlock failures have only resulted in one canonical death in the series, or death, but Henry has resulted in a lot more. But ultimately, in number 2, being an Afton. Okay, look, springlock failures are horrible. Okay, yes, and yes, William is a horrible person, but being just an Afton in this universe must be the worst thing ever. It's like the worst spawn point in existence, because every Afton has been subjected to a horrible fate. It's like if Sean Bean is cast to play a character, you know that they're going to die. It's that, but if you're an Afton, you're going to suffer a horrible fate. Okay, let's go through the list, shall we? Here we go. William, spring-locked, possessed, forced to suffer for like 60 years at least. Charlotte, grabbed by Baby, going on to possess the animatronic, then joins a group of other animatronics that crawl inside of her big brother to escape an underground facility, and then gets kicked out of the greater collective, and then goes on to try to impress her father that caused her death in the first place by creating the robot that killed her. Talk about daddy issues. Then we have Crying Child, who we don't even know this kid's name. He watched his sister get crushed, he got crushed by a robot, and then he goes on to possess his brother and makes him suffer before realizing that it's not his fault. Then, speaking of the brother Michael, he blamed himself for killing his brother. He then spent his whole life trying to undo his father's horrible acts, and he himself was scooped in stuff full of robot parts, including his sister, which is again a whole other issue. He was made into a purple bruised man that everyone was scared of, and he was finally burnt to death in FNAF 6 by Henry without even being given the option to survive. So yeah, being an Afton is cursed. And that's not even talking about how Gregory or Vanessa could be Aftons. And finally, in at number 1, the lore! Oh, the worst thing about FNAF is the lore. Yeah, having to try to figure it out or even think about it or try to give it any coherent links is probably the most horrific thing that you can try to attempt in regards to the series, yes, but also literally at all. Do not try this, please. I get messages on Instagram saying like, oh, I have a FNAF theory and I was hoping we could talk about it. Like, I appreciate that you want to talk to me about it as opposed to like Matt Pat or someone famous, maybe because I'm more likely to reply because I'm not famous. But like, the best advice that I can give to you is if you value any shred of your sanity, do not try this. Do not attempt to put any shred of logic into FNAF. It will break you. Okay, do you think that I wanted to do this? Do you think that I planned on doing this for 2 years? No! I read one comment that said I see a FNAF in the thumbnail and I click, and it drove me so far into the madness that I'm basically the Joker of the FNAF community. People don't like me because I made a joke video about the worst FNAF fan games that included games that people loved, and now it's on the goddamn YouTuber wiki as a controversy. People get mad at you for misgendering fictional robots. They're robots and not real. People were furious with the Pop Goes creator because of that, and I'm like, what? Dude, just don't do it, okay? I'm not gatekeeping. I'm genuinely trying to help you. I want you you to be okay. So please, save yourself from the toxicity and let my heart and soul be the one to suffer all of this torture.
Number 10. William Afton and the leak. Probably one of the most iconic when it comes to springlock failures is William Afton. William Afton from the games, that is. In this version of the story, William Afton basically got destroyed by these spring locks. He was fully impaled by the spring locks in the springlock Bonnie suit after trying to escape the ghosts of his victims. He thought hiding inside the spring Bonnie suit would protect him, but hey, he was wrong. It turned out that there was water on the floor which, when he touched, caused the spring locks in the suit to loosen, or water that possibly dripped down from him, and also his breath. This caused the spring locks to malfunction, they fully released and impaled William, ultimately causing his death. However, this is William Afton, so even dying would not keep him dead forever. It would only keep him dead for a little while. We later learned that one of the vengeful spirits, or possibly a pair of them, cursed William to experience the pain that they had felt, thereby extending his life indefinitely, no matter the pain he suffered. Which is how William Afton can be a shambling corpse, but also somehow still alive. And friends, before I move on to this next spot on the list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you love FNAF 2, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Can you springlock a ghost? To answer this question, we could turn to the Fazbear Frights book 135 AM, and one of the stories within its pages, titled The New Kid. In this story, a young boy named Devin befriends the new kid at school, Kelsey. However, while his other friend Mick seems to really like Kelsey, and at first, Devin does too, eventually Devin becomes jealous of Kelsey. When Kelsey seemingly ditches them one day when they're all hanging out, Devin decides to get revenge on him for doing this. Finding a new hangout spot, a now abandoned former Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, Devin dares Kelsey to put on a springlock suit. Kelsey does this and begins dancing around, but doing so, of course, triggers the spring locks within the suit to release, seemingly impaling him. While initially Devin and Mick leave Kelsey there for dead, Devin eventually returns to investigate. With Mick wondering if Kelsey might still be alive. When Devin does return, he doesn't see Kelsey in the suit, but later spots a black-haired ghostly figure within. It is implied that Kelsey is some kind of spirit of vengeance, possibly one of the spirits from the game lore that possessed Golden Freddy. And if you're wondering how we know that, well, later in the book we see that Kelsey is alive and well, seemingly, after he seemed to have been springlocked, so either he has superpowers or he a ghost. Number 7. The Amazing Escape. William Afton in the books is much more lucky, or perhaps just more brilliant, than his video game counterpart. At least when it comes to dodging spring locks somehow. Like in the games, he ends up getting spring locked, but instead of being killed by this experience, he miraculously survives, seeming to somehow pull a Harry Houdini and just escape that. While Charlie activates the spring locks in the suit he's wearing at the end of the novel Five Nights at Freddy's The Silver Eyes, we learn in the next book, The Twisted Ones, that the blood found at the scene ends up being analyzed in a lab and found to be fake blood. Finally, in the fourth closet, it is confirmed that William Afton, while harmed, miraculously survived being spring locked. I don't know how this is possible, but it's a thing that happened. Pretty impressive considering in most other cases, it's pretty much a death sentence.
In its 7, WWWAD. Ah, yes. What would William Afton do? Cause honestly, being him would suck worse than a springlock failure. I mean, like, I rip on Elizabeth all the time for wanting to impress her father in FNAF 6 like I was just doing, but I'm right to, okay? This man is an absolute psycho and not even a smart one. I have made so many videos about how dumb William is. Like, what if William Afton was smart? Top 10 William Afton dumbest moments. William Afton's luckiest moments. And that last one was just me ripping on him again because somehow, despite being this stupid and insane, he managed to not get caught. Every single time I talk about how stupid he is, I talk about how he could have done it better, which is why in various videos I will say hi to the jury, because I know for a fact that if anything ever happens in this area, they're coming to me first because I know how to be a psycho. But still, come on, that's it. That's the number, okay? Being springlocked would suck, but William Afton sucks harder. Wait, no, that sounds like, no, wait, no, don't cut me off. I didn't mean it's 6 doors. You knew that this was going to be on the list, okay? If you've been on this channel at all, you know that I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That doesn't make sense, okay? If it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing them power to keep the doors open rather than keep them closed. Gravity does not work in reverse. If the magnet is off when the door is up, it would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, okay, but what in-universe thing makes this make sense? People say that it's like a safety issue, so like if there's a fire or whatever, you can leave, but that's what windows are for. I am almost positive that there should be a window in that room, and if there's not, that's yet another OSHA violation that they need to address, okay? There's no conceivable way in any reality that the doors should work that way, but they do, and it makes me mad. Like, why would you do this, okay, Scott? Why? Sky Daddy Scott, I'm bringing it back. Why? Some people, like I said, it's a fire safety thing, but like, no. If the building runs out of power, how could the doors open? Electromagnets use power to be on. So like, even if it is a fire thing, how are they keeping them up? I don't get it. Also, if you made it through this far, subscribe. You clearly enjoy the video, or just me going insane. And there's plenty more of that on this channel, no matter which one you liked, so you're welcome. How about doing number 5, being a cop? Being a cop in the FNAF universe must be a horrible idea, because not only are you now a cop, but you're also a cop in the FNAF universe, which for the sake of this list is working at the precinct that failed to capture William Afton, okay? So now the public ridicules you, they don't think you can actually do your job, and you probably got your budget cut so badly that you're maybe able to get one squad car, but that's it. One squad car for the whole station. Plus, now you gotta deal with multiple arson cases, and the fact that Freddy's keeps coming back and more kids keep going missing. I don't know. There's a weird purple guy walking around that smells bad, but it's like also like a skin condition, so you can't really say anything about it without absolutely destroying the slightest bit of reputation that you have left as an officer in this universe. Like, that's in essence what it's like to be a cop in FNAF. Okay, or what it would realistically be like. Because honestly, these dudes didn't check inside the bleeding, death-smelling animatronics when kids went missing in that building. So, I get it. They're either ridiculed by the public, or you just lose the majority of your IQ once you join up with them. Those are the only two explanations. It could be both as well. And at 4, MCI. The missing children's incident is definitely worse than a Springlock failure. I mean, the one failure that we know about that happened in the games only affected one person, and a horrible person at that. So I mean, just by sheer numbers alone, the missing children's incident is definitely worse. But not even just that, okay? Those parents must have been in a rough spot. Not only did they lose their kids, but they also have to deal with the incompetence of the in-universe police and the whole plot requirement of Afton getting away with it to actually continue the series. So yeah, like I said, there were literally animatronics leaking mucus and blood that people were comparing to human corpses, and they weren't actually investigated. So, do you know how insanely infuriating that would be? Okay, I'm surprised that Henry was the one to put Afton down and not someone else. Like, yeah, he got springlocked in '93, but that was 7 years after the missing children's incident. Had I been one of those parents, I would not have cared about the prison sentence, okay? And I don't think that anyone would have really judged me for it. I think that they would have thanked me and posted my bail. I mean, I would have lost the trial, but still. Hi, jury.
Number 3, payback. Going back to the Fazbear Fright story, the new kid from the 1:35 a.m. book, Kelsey, wasn't the only one to get springlocked in the story. When Devin returns to the abandoned Freddy's to see if Kelsey might still be alive, he notices the suit is empty. He thinks he sees something further inside, and so he decides to reach into the mouth of the suit, only for the suit to seemingly clamp down on his arm. Of course, you should never do that. If you see something and you're like, oh, maybe I'll put my arm in this thing where my arm could get stuck, don't do it. The more he struggles, the more he seems to get sucked into the suit. Sure, this isn't so much a springlock failure from the inside, and no one's wearing the suit in some of these. It's more reminiscent of the bite of '83, because I don't think there was anyone in that suit. But this is still a springlock suit failing. So, while different, I still consider it to be a failure with consequences. Consequences being, Devin also likely died.
And at 10, Crying Child. Okay, so I'm putting this one at number 10 because I personally don't think that the Crying Child is a springlock victim. To me, there's just no logical way that that animatronic jaw should have crushed his skull, because, the springlocks were already active and that would require a lot of power to crush a skull anyway. However, it is possible that since this is a series about haunted animatronics possessed by spirit metal, that logic kinda gets thrown out the window. So assuming that he is a springlock victim, that's brutally scary. Being thrown into an animatronic animatronic's mouth and crying so much that you make the jaw snap onto your own skull, killing you instantly? Holy crap, that is nightmare fuel. That's why some people are scared of robots or animatronics, and while it may not be realistic, the possibility of it happening is still horrifying to say the least, especially since not even that long ago he lost his sister to Circus Baby, and that's pretty messed up. And I'm sure that Michael, who put the kid in his mouth, as long as, you know, I'm wrong about my theory, he'd be scarred for life. And I think I would be too. Before we move on to number 9, can you do me a favor and smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't yet if you are looking forward to this list. I saw a load of comments asking for it, so this better not flop. If it flops, so help me, you will all have a reckoning. The more likes we get, the more likely we are to do a part 2, and it also helps us against the algorithm almighty and lets us grow the channel, which means more cool vids for you, so you know, it's a win-win, so thank you. And at 8, The New Kid. Continuing with the theme of FNAF books, what about the story The New Kid from 1:35 AM, the third Fazbear Frights book? The story revolves around Devon, Mick, and Kelsey. Devon and Mick are outcasts. They aren't popular, they aren't cool, but when the new kid Kelsey arrives at their school, they make a new friend, despite Kelsey being charismatic and adored by everyone else in the school. Over time though, Devon grows jealous of Kelsey, since Kelsey has everything that Devon wants. So in an act of revenge or to gain control, because you know that's kind of serial killery, Devon hatches a plan to lure Kelsey to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's to trap him in a springlock suit for a couple hours, to try to humble him, I guess. But the plan goes horribly wrong. After getting in the suit, the springlocks fail, as expected, because you know this is a FNAF book, causing Kelsey's blood to soak into the fur of the animatronic and pull around the ground. Devon and Mick leave Kelsey for dead so that they won't get in trouble, but something doesn't feel right. So a week later, Devon returns to make sure that Kelsey's body is still there, for some reason. He sticks his hand into the animatronic's mouth to feel if it's there, and snap! The springlocks fail yet again, as per usual, and Devon gets his hand stuck inside the suit and bleeds out, but not before seeing a body in the suit, but with black hair instead of Kelsey's blonde hair. If that's not scary, then you need to go see a doctor, because that's bone chilling. That's messed up. No.
Number 6, triggered by wriggling off mini arenas. This is probably my favorite consequence when it comes to the spring locks malfunctioning. Likely because you yourself actually get to experience failure in a way. But obviously not in real life, because that would be awful and horrible and extremely painful. Instead, you experience it in game. So although you can't feel it, you can't imagine what it would feel like, which honestly is also terrifying to do. This time when the spring locks fail, it is as a result of your movement. You are the one who must wriggle to shake off the mini arenas, which are climbing up the suit and attempting to kinda climb into it with you. If this happens enough times, the mini arena's jump scare will get triggered, implying your death by mini arenas. However, if you also wriggle too much to keep them off you, without winding the spring locks back up enough, you will trigger the spring locks release, which will also result in your death by being impaled by suit parts which are released by those spring locks. Yikes. Number 5. The fate of Shadow Freddy. Shadow Freddy is thought by some, in regards to lore, to have been a possible springlock victim. The consequences of this employee's springlock failure would be, of course, that they died. That's right, people believe that Shadow Freddy, who appears to be somewhat ghostly in nature, is actually the spirit of a former Freddy's employee, who died while wearing a springlock Freddy suit. It's believed that for one reason or another, the suit malfunctioned, murdering its wearer. As a result, Shadow Freddy was born to haunt its former workplace, and was also likely one of the reasons that springlock suits stopped being used, at least temporarily. Although apparently not soon enough, as there were other failures that occurred possibly even after this one. Number 4. The fate of RWQFSFASXC. Some believe that not only is Shadow Freddy a victim of the spring locks failing, but so is the shadowy figure of RWQFSFASXC. They believe that this shadowy Bonnie was another employee who, instead of being killed by the springlock Freddy suit, met their end while inside the springlock Bonnie suit, which also failed. My question is, if these employees happen to both die as a result of wearing and using the springlock suits and the suits malfunctioning, did they die on the same day? Because if not, why would you ever continue to use these suits as a company? And why would you ever, as an employee, agree to get in another one? Unless one of them was hired after the other one and like no one told them about what happened to the last person to put on one of those suits? Still, legal liability right there. Like, my alarms are going off for like lawsuits. Of course, this was only a theory anyways, and actually one that Scott claimed was incorrect in regards to the true origins of both Shadow Freddy and RWQFSFASXC.
Halfway through into number 5, Garvey. A psychopathic, cold-blooded killer. He stopped being human long ago. That's how Garvey is described in the extras of Dormitibus, the game from which he hails. Garvey is the penultimate antagonist of Dormitibus, and as a human, he was the man who murdered the missing children. He later went on to get trapped in Spring Bonnie, becoming Springtrap, and then was burnt to a permanent death in the Fazbear Fright's fire. Garvey is a more gory version of Springtrap from FNAF 3. However, he is not William Afton, as the game was released before the name reveal, even before FNAF 4. Springtrap, but with hardly any exosuit or animatronic casing, whatever you want to call it. He crawls on all fours and uses his left hand as a foot and his left foot as a hand, like some demonic monkey from hell that Satan didn't sanction the creation of. Just look at this thing and tell me that it shouldn't be on this list. If you do, you'll be lying. And at 3, Am I Real? Am I Real, also known as Cake Bear, is presumably the primary and most recurrent antagonist in Dormitibus. Am I Real has 2 different forms. His first form is Cake Bear. Cake Bear's design originated from the Save Him minigame, where he delivered cake to children while a kid is murdered outside. He is the predecessor of both Fredbear and Freddy Fazbear. Cake Bear is a brown bear animatronic that also acts like a spring-locked suit that appears in most of the main nights. Although they do look similar, the only similarities he has to Freddy Fazbear in reality is that they both possess a top hat, are brown, have blue eyes, and are a bear. Am I Real's second form is a form that resembles Springtrap, however. This form has a green color much like Springtrap and contains human remains. His right eye socket has gotten bigger on the side and a big hole can be seen on the right side of his head. His top hat has received some withering on it as well, and his lower jaw is slanted and worn down, no longer circular like Cake Bear's. He also has a sizable hole in the right side of his torso, revealing organs. Ha, lovely. Rips and tears cover his arms, revealing more human remains. He also appears to be missing at least 1 finger on his right hand, and it's absolutely terrifying to look at. Of course, 3 out of 10 of these are going to be from Dormitibus. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Did you watch the Dormitibus animatronics list? Finally, in at number 1, you. A spoiler alert for a fan game, and if I say which fan game, it's going to spoil it. So, if you want to avoid spoilers, click away now. And thanks for watching. I'll give you a chance to do that now. Okay, now that you've prepared for spoilers, A Shadow Over Freddy's is a FNAF fan game created by Fiznam on GameJolt. It released on April 25th, 2018, and since it was made by the same guy who is currently working on FNAF Plus for the Fazbear fanverse, you know it's bound to be good. The gameplay of A Shadow Over Freddy's is a hybrid between a traditional point-and-click game and a free-roaming horror game. The player wakes up to find themselves with no memories in a black and white abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and is tasked with surviving 5 nights in escaping the restaurant. The player is given a different task each night and must complete said task before 6 AM and without being attacked by any roaming animatronics. However, the ending of the game has you getting trapped in a spring-lock suit and left to rot, meaning that you are a spring-lock victim, which is probably the scariest victim of them all, cause I don't know about you, but I'd rather not get spring-locked. Although I know there are plenty of you that would just love that. You'd fill the suit with liquids that aren't blood, and that's messed up. Like, I'm not one for kink shaming, but yeah, there's kinks, and then there's like being killed, you know? I don't know how else to put that. And a 10, Unnamed Man. In 2015, there was a tragic incident at a Volkswagen plant in Germany in which a man was killed by a robot. The victim was part of a team that was setting up the robot, which was responsible for picking up components and assembling them into car parts. The robot was normally kept in a cage, and it was while the man was working on it inside the cage, and that's when the incident occurred. According to reports, the robot grabbed the man and pinned him against the metal sheets, causing serious injuries. The man later died as a result of those injuries. In a statement, Volkswagen said that they believed the incident was caused by human error, and it's worth noting that another worker who was inside the cage with the victim at the time was not harmed, but they weren't really sure. Or at least, of course, they're gonna say it was human error. And at 9, Wanda Holbrook. In March 2015, a robot at the Ventra Iona Mains plant in Michigan caused the death of Wanda Holbrook, a 57-year-old maintenance specialist who worked at the plant. The plant, which produced car parts, was divided into sections, with robots from one section supposedly unable to enter another. However, one robot did cross into a section where Wanda was working and picked up a trailer part, which it then dropped on her head, killing her instantly. The robot was attempting to load the trailer part onto a fixture that had already contained another trailer part, which should have been impossible, due to the fact that a fixture can only hold one trailer part at any given time. Wanda's husband William filed charges against the 5 companies involved in the production of the robot, and I'm pretty sure he won. But skull crushing, come on, that's too close. In a day to Oerlikon. In 2007, 9 South African soldiers were killed and 14 were injured when an anti-aircraft weapon, the Oerlikon GDF-005, malfunctioned during a training exercise at the Army's Combat Training Center in Northern Cape. The weapon, which is capable of firing, targeting, and engaging hostiles without human intervention, and can even reload automatically, jammed and exploded before firing 250 rounds of high explosive 33mm rounds from its 2 barrels at the soldiers. It's believed that the accident may have been caused by either a software or mechanical failure, and according to Richard Young, CEO of a defense company, this type of malfunction is not uncommon, and he's witnessed similar incidents with automatic anti-aircraft weapons in the past. But fortunately, no one was killed in those instances. But if that's an issue, and not an uncommon one, maybe you should fix it. And at 7, Grim Fredbear. Grim Fredbear is one of the antagonists from Final Night's 3 Nightmares Awoken. He's only active on night 5 and found in the left hallway. Grim Fredbear resembles the normal golden Fredbear suit, only with his suit glowing a deep purple while the interior of the suit glows a bright white. His upper face appears to be torn off, including his eyes, leaving an empty, hollow, gaping hole in its place. The inside of the mask, though it appears like there's nothing really inside, actually conceals a white, pale human head that can only be seen during his jump scare. And before you ask, yes, it's mine. The animatronic is clearly meant to be a reference to Shadow Freddy and the theory that the Shadow animatronics were Springlock victims, which was later confirmed by Scott to be false when stating that William was the only victim of a Springlock failure. And in the museum level, which unlocks after night 5, it is revealed that Grim Fredbear is a Springlock victim, saying, quote, another Springlock failure victim, the 2nd generation of Fredbear. Getting close to the end of number 3, Sodesia Sterling Heights. On December 15th, 2012, an employee at Sodesia Sterling Heights, a US company that manufactures car parts, was killed while working inside a robot work cell. The 38-year-old male employee was inside the cell when the gates closed and he was struck from behind by a transfer robot, which crushed his chest and back. The company, which specializes in producing heavier car parts such as chassis components, used powerful robot arms to lift and maneuver these parts around the plant. In this incident, the machine should have been powered down, but it moved unexpectedly and pinned the worker against the wire of the cage, causing the fatal injuries, which is unfortunate and really makes me question why we use robots at all. But ultimately, in number 2, robot surgeons. Robot-assisted surgery is a form of minimally invasive surgery that allows surgeons to perform complex procedures through small incisions or remotely using a computer console. I had one of these used on me when I was getting my appendix out. These robots have been hailed as a major advancement in 21st century medicine because they offer increased precision and control for the surgeon, which can lead to improved patient outcomes. However, it is important to note that like any medical procedure, robot-assisted surgery carries some risks. A study in the United States found that surgical robots may be linked to the deaths of 144 people between 2008 and 2013. The causes of these deaths varied, but included system errors that caused delays in the procedure and instances of machinery falling into patients' open wounds. Despite these risks, robot-assisted surgery is still widely used in the medical field because it offers many potential benefits to both patients and surgeons. For example, it can allow for less trauma to the patient during the surgery, faster recovery times, and less scarring. But overall, the use of surgical robots in the medical field is a complex issue that requires careful consideration for both the surgeon and the patient for, risks and benefits, and either way, it's up to you. And finally, in at number 1, Regina Elsa. In June 2016, 20-year-old Regina Elsa was killed in a robot-related accident just 2 weeks before her wedding. The incident occurred at Asian USA, a South Korean-owned plant in Cusseta, Alabama that produced parts for Hyundai and Kia vehicles. On the day of the accident, Elsa and some co-workers were attempting to repair a faulty robot despite the fact that they weren't supposed to do so. They had tried to reach the maintenance department, but no one answered their calls, so they decided to fix the robot themselves, probably out of fear that they would get in trouble if the robot wasn't working. Unfortunately, the robot suddenly restarted and pushed Elsa against another machine, causing serious injuries. She was taken to the East Alabama Medical Center and airlifted to UAB Hospital, but she died the following morning. An investigation into the incident revealed that Agent USA had committed several safety violations in order to maximize profits, and in fact, the US Department of Labor had fined the company and two staffing agencies $2.7 million for 27 safety violations just 2 weeks before this incident.